Alright, hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you for being here and painting. We're going to use an 8x10 panel canvas, our primary colors plus black and white. And I'm going to start with actually a small round brush to sketch out what we're going to be painting, and then we're going to color everything in. So it's a little bit of a different process every single time, but we're going to keep it simple because these are all the materials we're using. A few simple brushes. I usually recommend a few rounds, and a few flats. And I also like the filberts. So the filberts are the rounded top. So any of the Princeton brushes, that's like pretty much what I'm always using, are going to be great. So if you just get a few of those, you're good to go. So that's all I'm going to be painting with today. So I'm just starting with a small-ish round brush. It doesn't have to be that small because a lot of what you're going to see in the first layer is going to get painted over. And we're going to start with just some pink. And then we're going to find the center. I always find the center because it just helps you with your composition to make sure it's like building off of a center point. And then once I have my center point, that's where the head of the butterfly is going to go. So I'm going to pull from that center point over to the right, and notice how I'm not going too much, like at least leave a quarter of the canvas up here on the right. Don't go too high. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. So it's slightly arched up. And then this, we're going to go not as far, make like almost all the way. And then we can go from that center and draw a diagonal line coming down. And I want to go kind of far, leave a couple inches from the bottom. And then you're going to pull the bottom of the wings. So from here, I'm going to make a little smiley face and then make a rainbow and then make a smiley face. And then I'm going to make another smiley face, and it's going to go back into the bottom. So that's just going to be like that part of the wing. And then on the other side, we're doing the same thing, but pretend that a little bit of the wing is coming off the canvas. So I'm going to go in and make a little smiley face, make a rainbow, make that smiley face again, and then another couple more smiley face shapes. And it can be really, don't even worry about this part. We're going to be painting over with black. So it's just a loose sketch. And it doesn't have to be exactly even. And it probably won't be, and that's fine. So there we go, you know, and then you can make this just a little bigger at the top for the head to come out just a bit. And then the tail could be just a little thicker, but it's pointy still. You can sketch in the body if you want, so we're going to make it a little bigger. This line right here is just going to get widened up. And I'm just using the pink as my sketch color. So much fun. Now you want the majority of the background to be a green color, and then we're going to put some flowers in different shades. So now that we have this, we're going to block in. I'm going to color the inside of the butterfly, and I'm going to color the outside. So I'm going to do the inside of the butterfly first. Use a big-ish paintbrush. Don't use something too small. I'm just going to use a large round to do this. And I'm going to make orange. So I'm using red and yellow. Start with not too dark. I'm using like a medium, so use plenty of yellow. And then we're just going to color it in. I don't need to color the body in, but you can. If you, or like we will, but you don't need to color it orange, but it's okay if it gets a little orange in it, is what I mean to say. So I'm not deliberately coloring it in, but I'm not too worried about accidentally getting a little bit of orange in there. No big deal. And I'm just coloring it in. This is going to get layers, so I'm not, again, the edges is going to get painted, but I will take it up to the edge and let it be kind of rough. No big deal. And again, I want it to be kind of not too dark, so make sure it looks orange, not red. Sometimes that red can get really strong, take over your color. Go ahead and clean your brush. And then just drying it off. Now for the background, you could use a larger brush even because it's even more space to cover. So anything like just a flat, kind of like straight edged brush or just a bigger brush in general. It doesn't really matter what kind of brush you use. It's just whatever feels good for you to get the coverage on there. And I'm going to make a green, but I want it to be kind of light. So I'm using a lot of yellow and a little bit of blue. And I even want to throw a little bit of white in there to give it a little bit of a pastel green background color vibe. And then I'm just coloring it in. And again, I'm taking it up to my sketch lines, but I'm not really worried about it being perfect because I'm going to be painting black around the edges. And just try to relax as you do this. I always say, you know, put on some music, light a candle, you know, make it a relaxing experience. Maybe you're painting with others, or maybe you're just doing it on your own. Doesn't really matter. This should be a fun, relaxing activity. So don't worry about making it look too close to what I'm doing. Realize you can paint over things. And that's what I love about painting. We can just be playful here. And we don't have to worry too much about the outcome. We're not comparing. But notice I have a pretty bright green as my base color. And we'll layer. All a layering process with painting. All right, so now we have our green layered in. Now from this point, we can always go in with that brush that we painted the butterfly with. And maybe I'll add a little extra yellow into my orange. And then just go around the edge of the body. Make it pull a little more light orange on top. I'm just kind of pulling from the center of the body out. And then just make sure you have the body shaped the way you want it. You don't want it to have any space between when we go and fill it in. But make sure your orange is good. And just touch up anything you need to. Sometimes it's good to just put it in there, let it dry a little bit, come back in, touch it up a little bit, and then proceed. So with the orange on there, I'm going to add a little bit of black to the orange. And that's going to give me a dark brown. The more black you have, the darker your brown will be. So I do want a pretty dark brown to start. It's pretty dark, but it has a little bit of red and yellow mixed in so that it's not just a pure black. And that's the color we're going to do for the body. So I'm going to pull that in. And just coloring in that shape in the center. And I just like let my brush strokes be really loose because it's funner for me to create that way. So there's that. And then for the out edge of the wings, we will add more black. So it's almost pure black for the out edge of the wing. And then I'm just outlining. The top of the wing I don't want too thick, so I'm just barely touching that round brush. You could use whatever size brush is getting you the result you want. So don't need to use what I'm using. I'm using a rather large round brush, but it has a nice tip on it. And I'm able to get thin lines by not pressing too hard. And I just like the feel of using this kind of brush. And I'm not trying to make the lines that thin anyways. They're not like crazy thin. And I do want to get some thick lines right in a minute here. So once I get the top, the rest of the lines are going to be kind of thick. So the edges of the wings are like pretty thick. So I'm going to push harder. See how it makes it so much easier if you have a big brush. You could just push harder and then you automatically get that thicker line that you need in one brush stroke instead of struggling to color it in. And then I'm just following that shape. And you can kind of wiggle the brush a little. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then same thing over here. We want it a little thicker at the tip of the wing. So I'm even painting over some of the orange to get it thicker. And then we are really thickening up. And this is why I wasn't worried about coloring in between the two colors. I didn't even care because I knew I was going to do this. So you just got to trust the process. And then I'm going to pull from kind of towards the top of the body, but leave a little space. I'm going to pull a line that comes down to the outer edge of the wing. And notice how I kind of went where I have a little bit of a groove in my line. So you want to try to do that. I'm going to go here, this side. Just let it kind of flow into the outer wing. And then touch up the edges a little bit if you need to. And now I'm going to let that dry before I fill in any more. And while that dries, I'm going to clean the brush and we're going to add some more layers in the background here. Now we do want it to be dry before we go on, so you might want to blow dry your canvas a little bit, just because you don't want to mix your green and your purple together. They look pretty next to each other, but they don't look so good when blended together, so we're not going to blend them. All right, and now that I have that all dried, I'm going to make sure to clean and dry your round brush or whichever brush you want to use here, and then I'm going to make my purple. I'm going to do mostly red with a little bit of blue and white. Not too much white. And then I'm going to go in and I want to put a little flower here. So I'm just going to make little dabs going in a circle motion to make a flower shape. Just like that. And then maybe I'll do some over here. Same thing. But you can just have some random or like loose brush strokes if you want. Put some down here. And I'm just dabbing in a circle. And so that's pretty good. I don't want to add too much. And then I'm going to add more of a pink shade. So I'm going to add more red over here and white. So there's still a tiny bit of blue in it, but it's much more pink. And then I can go in and put that like on top, but just in some spots. But notice how I'm adding it to each element, at least a little bit. Just dab it on, let it be loose. Maybe I have some just random pink dabs. I think some more. that are going out from the purple a little bit. I don't know, we're gonna go abstract here. We're not like trying to make it, I want to have some other like random little pinkish dabs coming around the purple. Good. And then we want that to dry a little bit. So just add some little dabs everywhere. It's so easy to do this. Then I'm cleaning the brush. And then what I'm going to do is go in and add some different shades of green while this dries a little bit. That way we can add more to the flowers, but not too much too soon. Sometimes if you have too much layering at once, it gets muddy, and we don't want that. You just have to be patient with the process instead of rushing it. And then I'm going to create, again, different shades of green. So blue and yellow, it's our green. I'm going to go in with some dark green. Adding black to the green is going to help make it look blacker. And then I'm going to put that in the corners, especially make little dabs. See, I'm going around that bright flower color that I made right there. Again, blue, yellow, and black. And maybe I have some here. It's okay if you paint over some of what you have going on. I'm going to pull some here, maybe just like that. The bottom, I'm just doing like random brush strokes that are coming out of the edge of the canvas. So these darker shades are great because it's going to pull your eye in a little towards the middle more and give more depth to the scene and the foliage that we're trying to replicate or represent with our colors. And maybe I have some fun line brush strokes. So instead of doing dabs, like I can do dabs like this, you know, that are more like leafish. I can do a big one here. And then maybe like over here. But then in this space, maybe I do some more like lines where I just go whoosh. Maybe make sound effects. Sometimes that's helpful. It just creates like a different movement and it makes it interesting to the eye. So if everything looks too much the same, it can be kind of boring or awkward. So you want to create some variety in the shapes, whether that make them like just smaller in general or larger or just a completely different shape. So some lines instead of dabs. And then you can create more shades by maybe I add more yellow into that. So I still have a little bit of black and blue, but it's mostly yellow now. And maybe even some white. So it's just going to change the shade. Now it looks different. And that's what we're going for. And then I can go in and dab some of that around. You don't want it to just be that flat green, and it can layer over some of the other shade. So you don't want it to just be that first shade that we put in. And there's no, this is, you're just putting dabs of paint in, not trying to make it look like anything really. Maybe add more white, go in between. You just don't, again, you just want to break up some of those. That first shade we put is really pretty, but it's kind of, you know, you don't want that to be all you see. You can even put some of the lighter color over some of the darker color to break that up. So if maybe the dark color got a little crazy, you can take some of this lighter shade and just dab it right on top. But, you know, leave some darkness. Then I'm gonna let that go for now. So just like I let the other thing go, I'm gonna let that go. And then let's go back into our small brush. This is like any kind of, this is like a number 2 round from the Princeton Princeton brushes. And then what I'm going to do is add those thinner lines. I'm going to do the black. And then what I want to do is pull from towards kind of the middle of this upper shape. I'm going to pull out towards the edge. Like that. And then from there you can pull some shapes that go down. And I can add some more bordering. See, I can go there and add like some thicker lines that kind of cut across. And as the lines come into the edge, the thick edge, you can triangulate into that line. So make it thicker and then thinner as it pulls into the space. And then same thing here, you're going to go from the top here, make a little teardrop shape. So I'm doing the same thing on both sides. I'm going to go up to the top, make a little wiggle. And then from the top here, we're going to go straight, make that little loop, like kind of a big giant oval. And then we're going to pull from that down into the outer edges of the wings. And then we'll do some down here. Well, just let go of the perfectionist in you if you're one. It's much more, you're going to have more fun just playing than you are going to be trying to make it look perfect. And then at the top, you can do some little antennae, like maybe pull out to some little black lines. You can add some more dark shading to the butterfly. Notice I can just go along the left side and dab to make it look darker on the left. You can kind of change the shape, make it a little thicker, just make it a little more, interesting. You don't want lines to be too perfect because kind of that tends to look a little harsh sometimes. So just be careful with that. And I want to go up in here and kind of block in a little more black. It's just kind of dividing up that space a little bit. Just clean up your lines a little bit. I just zone out sometimes, and that's when you just kind of do what your painting needs. So I can talk to you about what I'm doing, but you also got to just do what yours needs because it's going to have to be different just because you're different. So I try not to be a micromanager. You got to kind of play too, just to see what's happening. And then we're going to let that dry a little bit before we mess with that again. We're going to go back into our flowers. But this time I'm going to use the smaller brush. So you can use that #2 round. But I actually feel like you could use a bigger one. You don't have to use such a small brush. I'm going to just use this because that's what I've been using. So just to avoid grabbing another paintbrush, it doesn't really matter. But I'm just saying you could go bigger. Now I'm using just the red and white. Make sure there's no, try to not get any blue in it this time. Before that we were playing with a little bit of blue mixed in. This time I want none and more white, so it's even a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to go in and add some more dabs to those purple flowers. Just dab. You can make little lines that move in a circle shape, or just little dots, whatever feels fun to paint. I like to do a little bit of both. And then you can overlay some of the other stuff in here like this, you know, add like a little more dotting to this. Clean up any little brush edges that look rough. And then you can even add slate yellow to that to create kind of a peachy pink. And you can add some of that in there. Maybe not in the purple flowers, you could, but I'm kind of doing it more in those little dotted areas where it's more of just majority of a pink color. And you can even use some pure white. So maybe I go in there and I go, psh, and then dot a little bit of pure white. And if you need to add any more paint to your palette, like make sure you have some fresh yellow, especially because we're going to go in and add a little more yellow. And again, I'm always just using these primaries, Liquitex Basics. That's it. Now I'm going to clean the brush because I'm going to go back into my butterfly again. And then we're going to do orange again, but this time I do want a darker shade of orange. So maybe a little more red mixed in and not too much yellow. And then you can go in, and I want to go like towards the body shape and add a little bit of this darker shade right around the body. And you can do it kind of maybe around the edges of the black a little bit in some spots. So notice I'm not covering everything, I'm just adding to it. Makes it like around the edges. Of that black, those black lines we painted. You don't have to do it everywhere, but it just adds a little more depth to the wings because you don't want it to look like a flat shade of orange. Adding like a little bit of a different shade there. I'm just using like a dark orange where I have more red. And I'm going to clean the brush. And then you can even use some pure yellow or yellow with just the tiniest bit of red. So it's like, so it's way, way, way brighter than what we started with the orange. Like it's like almost like a dark yellow. And you can put that in the middle of in between those black lines. This is going to be like a highlight pulling. And then we can also add a little bit of that more of a yellow, bright yellow into the background on those pink little dots areas. So I'm just spreading it around a little bit. Let it be kind of thick and textured too if you want it to look pretty. Then go ahead and clean it. We're gonna add some more white. I'm gonna do just the white on the tip, and then we're gonna go in and add some dots. So to the end of the wings, I'm gonna do some little dabs and dashes and then little pokes. So you can make some that are a little bigger and some that are smaller. Just with the white. I'm just going all the way around the shape. And then you can even highlight the top wing here with a little bit of white. And you can highlight, you can do like some little dabbing on the top of the head, little dots. And maybe some highlighting on the right side. So you can just do a little bit to dabs of white. But if the white is too crazy, maybe do like a light peach or something. I'm actually gonna, I feel like the white is a little too harsh. I'm gonna spread it and tone it down just a little bit. I'm just pulling from the right side over to the left just a little bit to create a highlight on the right side. And again, you can take more of that yellow. Maybe I want to put some of that into the centers of some of those lavender flowers, those purple flowers. Maybe that's like a center, flower center. And any other little finishing touches you want to add. So you can put more black, you can do, you know, maybe I'll do like one last little touch of orange on the butterfly. So you can take that yellow and red and maybe add some more, like clean up the tips with orange, adding like maybe a little bit more. And again, you can always mix a little white in to make it jump out on top of the black. So you can always paint on top of the black and add some more orange in the wings anywhere, and like kind of where the white is where you're doing the dotting, you can do that there too. But just be careful, you know, if your paint is really wet like mine is, but I'm just kind of like layering it thick, so it's fine. You can just do some little dots or more little shapes up there. And just play around. You know, you can also add a little bit of white highlighting to the inside of the wings or just more light yellow. So just make sure you could see at least 3 shades in your wings. So like if I add a little more light into some of those parts, you know, that could look nice. Just make sure it doesn't look too flat, because that always ends up being kind of boring where you're like, ooh. And then you can touch up too. Like if you want to paint some orange over some of the black because the black got too thick or whatever, do that. You know, take your time. As long as you're having fun with it, you are good. So that's what it's all about. Hopefully you had fun painting this little butterfly. And again, it's just more of an abstract expression. We're not trying to make it look realistic. We're just putting the paint down, seeing how the colors dance together and having fun. So hopefully you did have fun. Hopefully you give a like, subscribe, and share and all that good stuff to spread the joy of painting. And that's what I love to do. So thank you for being here and painting with me, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.